Okay. No music on YouTube though for copyright issues, so feel free to just hang in Discord for now if you want, or hop in on YouTube, your call. Awesome, awesome. Okay, cool. We're gonna wait 5 minutes before we actually start. Just because that's our, you know, set starting time. Kill some time till then. How we doing, everybody? Ohio, Ohio. What's everybody up to? How's the day going? What up, Pluto? We're just gonna wait till the top of the hour to really start here. I saw this. This is my favorite fucking meme of the past like year. Where did this go? Line memes are the best. All right, I'll start here soon. We had like 8 people in here when I started it, and now we're down to 4. What happened? Hmm. Did Figma get rid of its about page? Hmm. Ohio through fame. Okay, remember you guys can adjust the volume of the music or completely get rid of it. Um, you didn't see that. Shh. Oh yeah, they completely redid their site. Interesting. Okay. Ohio, guys. This is so weird. And Discord has updated something. My computer lags so bad while I'm streaming now. You see my mouse like teleporting around? Discord, you had such a good app. Why do you have to touch it and break it? Ugh. I might have to do this just on YouTube. This is disgusting. My mouse is like 2 FPS. It's doing good till just now. Okay, that's not laggy. Alright, we're just gonna go with it. Maybe it was literally the Figma website page. Is this what was causing me to lag? Yes, weird. Alright, anyways, we're gonna dive right in here. Let me get some nice chill music going here. Okay, no, yeah. Wow, this page right here makes me lag like a motherfucker. Weird. Maybe it's Brave Shields? I don't know. Alright, so, not a scripted video, obviously, while I'm doing live stream. I don't have like a specific script set up for what we're going to go through, so I'm hoping you guys will actually participate today in terms of just asking questions in chat, calling out things you notice, you're wondering. So let's start from the super top. What is Figma? Figma is a 2D design software, so kind of like Photoshop or something. But that is for a very different type of work than Photoshop. So where Photoshop might be used for editing an actual photograph, doing sort of special effects, like if you wanted to custom blend two images together, anything that involves sort of detailed effect work, real photos, realism, that's going to be more in your Photoshop realm. Whereas Figma is more for 2D web design. And I don't just mean web design as far as websites, but no, I'm on my PC right now. I have a Mac and it's been fine. But I don't know if I've upgraded it actually, Sukumo. Interesting. Maybe I will not upgrade. Yeah, so Figma more for web design, and when I say web design, super broad. I more so mean digital design, right? So not just websites, but also things like NFTs, UI designs for websites, profile pictures, templates for things, really anything that you'd think of as like text heavy, having sections to it, having actually, I'm going to stop there because one of my favorite parts about Figma is despite that being what it's best for, it's super, super flexible. So I had never heard of Figma before I got into Web3. And within my first year or two of working in this industry, I realized most of the designers I was working with were using Figma. Most times when people would like share designs, like when they were contracted freelancers, they would be sharing a Figma file. And so I decided to kind of start to get to know it. So that's what we're going to kind of do today from start to bottom. So you guys can download Figma from their website. It is free, which is the best part. Paid version is more for enterprise uses, so it would let you have many different accounts that can work on files together. It would let you have larger types of projects. Nothing that you need as an individual just starting off. So the free version is fantastic. I use the free version for personal stuff. Obviously, Shogun has a paid organization set up. So I don't if you haven't already downloaded Figma, might be a little too late for you, but if you're watching this recording on YouTube after the fact, you have plenty of time, right? So if you want, pause the video, go download Figma, and you can follow along with me. Otherwise, feel free to just watch. I'm going to go through everything pretty slowly and basically. So unfortunately, I can't show you my Figma home page, like the actual landing page, because front and center is all of my recent files I've been working on, and there's some secret stuff in there. But essentially, when you start Figma, you'll have sort of a generic, doesn't really matter what it looks like, but there'll be a big old rectangle with a plus icon, a couple different places you can press it. In fact, I usually just do this plus up here. Let me adjust my screen so you guys can see the edges of my screen because I just noticed it's slightly cut off by our stream border. Nice, cool. Okay, that is much better. So up here you have tabs, kind of like a browser, right? So you can have many projects open at once. Here, you know what I can do? Because I do want to show one thing here. Just gonna go ahead and cover that. Okay, so under this big white square, I'm covering all of my recent files I've been working on that are a little secret. But when you open a new file, and your homepage will look somewhat similar to this. Figma now actually has a bunch of different kinds of files. I rarely use anything except design and FigJam. And today we're just going to be focusing on design. Real quickly, FigJam is really like a digital whiteboard. So you wouldn't design anything in it. You would just use it for brainstorming ideas. Like, it's super simple. Just create a text box. You can connect it to other text boxes. Truly like a digital whiteboard, just for team brainstorming, that sort of thing. And then design is where, actually I haven't touched any of these. I assume this is a slideshow builder, not sure, some kind of site builder, which you can do in design. So it's probably just help. And then make, I don't know what that is. But so within design, which is just your normal type of Figma file, that's how this started. So let me uncover my camera a little bit with this. You kind of have two types of files. So normally, if you just make a Figma account, everything you make is just going to be a draft. That's just what they call a normal Figma file, draft. If you are part of a team or an organization, you can also create files in that, and those are a little different in that you can let other people edit it alongside you. You get more features that don't matter for you guys right now as new people. But just so you know, it's sort of how Figma works. So we're going to go ahead and create a new draft. I guess I already had one. I'll close one here. And so first thing, before we even touch the actual program, I just want to let you know, if you're starting to do any of this for Web3 uses, there is a decent chance you'll work with other people, right? Whether it's that you're doing a job for someone, you're learning Figma with a friend, whatever it might be. So if I'll explain what tools I'm using right now for now, just bear with me. So let's just say we have like a little thing that we're working on here, and I want to say, hand this over to Sukumu. I want to say, or he says, yo, let me get my hands on that. I want to make some changes. I had some ideas last night, whatever. So this is how draft files work. A draft file, a normal Figma file, you see it says drafts free, whoops. Only you can edit it, but other people can view and comment it. So if I went to share here, and I copied the link, and you know what, I will do this. I'll paste it in here, so if anyone has Figma, you can click on that link, and it'll open the same thing you're seeing on my screen. I could have used an NFT, yeah, I should have. But you won't be able to edit it. However, what you are able to do is select a box around something, or just like click on its name, do Control-C, or right-click copy. Then you can go create your own draft, paste it in there, and then start editing on it. So does that kind of make sense right off the bat? So the one limitation of Figma being free is that only you can work on your files. But it's pretty easy to get around that by sharing your files with friends, having them copy whatever part they want to edit into their own file, and then they can edit from here. So let's pretend that this wasn't my file. Let's pretend one of you shared this with me, so I can't edit this, right? I can't do anything. What I would do instead is I would select as much as I want, copy, go create a new draft of mine that I own, and then paste. And then here I'll be able to edit everything because now we're in my file. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, you know, in case we want an image to play around with, grab Sukumus. So one thing I really love about Figma is stuff just sort of works. You copy images to your clipboard from anywhere, you can paste them right in, things work easy. But we're going to start from the top real quick. We're going to put this aside. We're going to give you a breakdown of what you are even seeing in this UI here. Wonder... There's one question I don't know about Figma. Increase Figma UI size. I want to make the UI a little bit bigger for you guys. On the desktop app, interface scale options. I should have looked this part up before. This is the one thing I should have done. In the desktop, click. Oh, keyboard shortcuts. Boom. Make larger. Control Shift Alt equals. That's a weird one. Control Shift Alt equals. Boom. Okay. So I'm gonna just make it a little easier for you guys to see things. So it's kind of annoying that this panel over here always starts on assets because I personally never use it. This is sort of your normal editing view. And you know what, these are our images up in the corner we were working with before. So now we're just completely blank file, starting from scratch. This is where you'll be at. So let's just start on the left and then down here in the toolbar. Actually, we'll start with the toolbar. So these are various tools you can use. Within this sort of section, there's really only two tools I ever use. The move tool, which is just the normal tool as you'd expect. Click on things, drag, select text, whatever. And then I just have this keyboard shortcut memorized. I never click on this little arrow. The other tool is scale. So if I hit K, you'll see it changes to the scale thing, and that'll let you change the size of something. So let's show an example of that. So our next tool over is frame. We'll actually come right back to that. Let's just make a square. So our third tool in is a bunch of shape options. You can do lines, arrows, ellipses, polygons, which you can do however many sides you want. Stars, you can customize how many tips there are, but depending on what you're doing, if you're doing Web3 work like I have, you're going to be using pretty basic shapes most of the time. So right now I'm on the move tool, right? I can click, drag this around, and it seems like I can scale it, right? Like you might be wondering, what is the scale tool? You're making it bigger and smaller right now. Kind of not. So first I want to show you how easy it is to grab images. So I have this image from Sukumu, just going to right click copy. And then paste that bad boy there. So this is, now we can actually look at the left side real quick. So you can see our layers. We have, whoops, didn't need to minimize it. We have this gray rectangle that I made. And then we have this image of Sukumu that I brought in. And you can see the image of Sukumu is on top, on the left over here. So if these things overlap each other, it's going to go on top. If we want to switch that, we can move that on top. Now that square will be on top, right? So now when you have an image, which actually works a little bit different than shapes. So when you have an image, dragging these corners, even with the normal tool, right? I'm not on scale, does kind of scale it. It's a little bit weird how they've named their tools. But the reason it's a separate tool is, let me go ahead and make a frame. So what a frame is, if any of you have used Photoshop before, you can kind of think of everything you see in Photoshop as your image, your main image, right? So let's just see if I can find, boom. So if you're in Photoshop, Your working area is your entire image, right? All this empty gray space you don't really use. That tells you that that's not the image. Like, this is what you're working on. Figma is a little different in that it's really a gigantic whiteboard where you can have a million different little projects going on at once, or different images. And so a frame is kind of like a parent layer that can hold a bunch of other stuff. This is usually where I make images. So if I'm making, let's say, a bunch of UI designs for a website, I'll click on this frame tool here. Sometimes I'll drag it myself. Other times you get these cool standard resolutions over here. So let's say I want to just go for a standard 1280 by 720p resolution. I don't know why I'd want it, just for an example. I can click on that and I get a frame that is 1280 wide, 720 above. These are pixels, these numbers we're looking at. And you can see over here it's width 1280, height 720. And so then within this, I can do a bunch of stuff. I can put a bunch of things. So I'm gonna Control C to cut that image. And then I'm gonna paste it inside. And you can see it's now like within this canvas. So this is sort of your equivalent to your one page that you get to work on in Photoshop. Ohio, Lycos. How you doing? And so pretty much whenever you start a Figma project for anything, let's say maybe you guys want to design a Twitter banner or play around with like some UI or something, maybe play around with a mobile app, some stickers, like stickers you could do in here for Discord, emotes, that sort of thing. Let's do that as an example. Let's say you guys want to make an emoji, right? You'll start by opening a new Figma and creating a frame that has whatever dimensions your emoji should be. So emojis are usually what, like 214 by 214 pixels, I think, something small like that. So I would go over here, I would type in 214 to the width and height, and then hit enter, and it actually changes it. And I don't know what has happened to our music, but it is now off the deep end. Let's bring this back on track. So now you have a rather small little frame to work in, and this would be where you actually create your emoji. Now you might think like, okay, but I don't want my emoji to have a big white background. Frames come with what's called a fill by default. So now let's kind of go through all this stuff on the right here. Let's go back to just our rectangle. So this is just a shape. This isn't an image. This isn't a frame. We just created it with the rectangle tool here. Actually, before I go over this, let me just quickly pause and ask, have I lost people? Am I going way too fast? Any questions? Any thoughts? Truly anything is okay to ask. I want to try and help you guys. Happy to go back and explain anything. I know I can sometimes talk fast, especially for non-American people. Okay, don't see anyone typing. Okay, cool. So going back to this rectangle, all right, Suku and Lycos, let's see what they're typing real quick. For people on YouTube, we are using Discord chat. If you just join Lycos, okay, you should be able to still pick up pretty much everything. So I shouldn't say every, pretty much every type of layer that you'll see over here, whether it's an image, like our Sukumu one, a frame, which is denoted by this hashtag, a shape that we drew in here, or continuing along our text bar here, some text, let's say sample text, right? That shows up with a little T icon, lets you know it's text. It also automatically names the layer, whatever's in the text, which is nice. So pretty much any type of layer are going to have similar options over here. You can see as I click between them, some do change for sure, but don't worry about that right now. The important ones stay consistent across all. So any kind of layer you can click on, right now we'll be focusing on this rectangle, has a fill. So this just means whatever shape the layer is, right? Let me quickly create a fucking weird shape. Okay. So we just created this super weird shape here, right? And we can click on it and select it, and you see it has no color to it because there's no fill. So if I go add a fill, boom, we have a nice white. Oh, I just realized my camera is a little bit in the way here. I can drag that up, beautiful. So here is where we could pick the color that we want to fill it with. We could pick any color, any flat color, like this. We can also adjust the opacity. So let me put this on top of the rectangle here so you can kind of see the opacity working. You can make it semi-transparent. Opacity is a word for how see-through something is. This slider right here is the same as this number right here. So if you don't want to open up the whole color menu, you can hover your mouse over the % sign, not the number itself. The number itself will let you click in it, but over the % sign, and you can drag up and down. So there's two different places to change opacity. Now you'll notice this shape automatically came with a stroke too. You see this black edge that it has? That's because it's a custom shape that I drew, and so all it knew was the outline, and so it wanted to give it a path. And so you see here in the stroke section under fill that we have a black stroke that's 1 pixel wide, 100% opacity, and the stroke is centered. I'll show you what that means in a second here. So similar to hovering over the %, you can hover over this, make the lines nice and thick. This is a pixel reading, so this is a 10 pixel wide stroke. You can kind of see that, like if we zoom in here to where we have the pixel grid, this is kind of flat. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So our stroke is about 10 pixels wide. See how when I hover over this, we get this blue outline too? That's just like, that's just what happens when you select anything. So we have a blue outline on this here, blue outline here. That just means like it's selected. It's what's currently selected. And you can notice on this that that blue outline is right in the middle of our stroke, right? So let's hide our stroke for a second. We can click this little eyeball and that will get rid of it. So as I hover over this or click on it, you can see that blue line is right at the edge of our blue. In fact, let's make these different colors just so it's a little more apparent. So this blue line is right at the edge. That's like the true edge of our shape, right? That's the boundaries of our shape before we've touched anything. Then if we add a stroke, it's kind of like bonus effects up on top. And so you can even see like over here, the stroke goes outside of our big blue box, right? It doesn't respect those boundaries. That's because we have the stroke set to centered, which you could probably already guess what that means, right? It makes it so the thick outline is perfectly centered with the edge of our shape, this blue line. If I change it to inside, you can see now the stroke would respect the boundaries of our shape layer. The stroke is only on the inside. Then we can go outside with it. And you can see there's no stroke like in the shape that we added. It's only outside. So how are things seeming so far? I know I haven't gotten to anything specific, anything that would help you actually design, but just sort of looking at tools. Are things sort of making sense? So let's say I wanted to do a circle instead. I could change my shape tool down here to a circle. Here's a cool little tip. So when I'm making a circle, or a square actually, I can make it an oval or a rectangle if I want. But if I hold Shift, it will keep it the same proportion. Not always square, just the same proportion as before you started changing it. So an example, let me make this a rectangle now. If I hold Shift and start grabbing this corner, it's locked to that sort of ratio of a rectangle, right? I can't make it like fatter than it is long. It kind of stays in this shape, just different sizes. And so that's mainly most helpful for when you want to draw a perfect square or a perfect circle. You can just hold shift when you start drawing it and get a nice clean thing. Oh yes, so okay, I wanted to go back to the little like these tools, which are your primary tools. So if we go down back here and we grab our like TV frame, you'll see when I'm on the move tool, I can change the size of this whole frame, but it doesn't change the size of the image in here, right? It's more like I'm dragging the edges of a picture frame to be bigger or smaller, right? But the picture inside is staying the same size. So this goes to what I was trying to talk about in the beginning. I probably shouldn't have touched on this at the beginning. I got a little ahead of myself, but that's the difference with the scale tool. So you could click it through here. I just hit K on my keyboard. If we have the scale tool enabled, and you can also tell over here, this side will be different based on what tool you have selected. So let me switch to the move tool. So now I'm on the move tool. I get my settings for fill. I don't like where my camera is. Let me see what I can do about that real quick. I'm gonna go with this, and at least you can see the full screen. We have nothing at the bottom to look at, unfortunately. Let's see. We can fix that. We can fix that. No. Damn. All right. I need to bring this cord back. Okay, cool. Timmy, can you show how to fit a selected image perfectly into a circle square? Oh, that is a perfect question. It's almost like we planned this. Okay. So here's where Figma starts to get really cool. And like, I don't know if you guys have used Photoshop or other things before, but these sort of things impressed me. Yeah, so let's say I want to take Sukumu's image here and make it circular. There's actually a couple different ways to do that. So first off, a very easy way is Figma has a built-in tool for making squares and rectangles have rounded corners. So if I click this, there's two different ways to do this actually. These little white dots that you see in each corner, I can click and drag those, and I get this nice, and actually, you know, the background of my document is this dark gray here. It's a little bit hard to see, so I'm actually going to do a lighter gray, just with a huge rectangle. I'm going to put that behind everything else. And then I'm also going to lock it, which don't worry about what that means. It just means I won't accidentally click on it. So now things should be a little bit easier to see. We just created a sort of nice working template for us, right? Sometimes I will do this if I'm working on really dark designs. Sometimes I'll make my working background white, right? For now, we're just going to go a slightly lighter gray. So yeah, with Sukumu's image here, or any image, and I'll show you, you can also do it with not even an image, but just a shape. So a shape, we have these little bad boys, click and drag. Weirdly, I don't usually click these. I usually use this over here just because I find myself often typing an exact value. But this is the same thing as dragging those handles. You can drag it up and down. You can type in 100. You'll get quite a thick curve. And so one super easy way to make an image circular is first make sure it's square. So actually, let's pretend Sukumo's wasn't square. Let's let me cheat a little bit here to make this. This is something you'll run into. You might get like a rectangular image and you want to make it square. So let's pretend his image is actually like that. And I'm going to make it so it actually is. Okay, so now we have an image of Sukumo that's not perfectly square. It's 1,500 pixels wide, but only 1,342 tall. So it's not quite a square. So the first thing you would do is make this a square. And just basic sort of math, this isn't anything specific to Figma, unless you're going to use AI generation. You can't add back pixels that aren't there, so you can't grow this 13 number up to 15. You're almost always going to have to trim, like cut off some of the image. So I could do that by a couple different ways, actually. But the easiest, like let's say this, I'm going to copy that number. I'm going to go to width. Paste. Oh, sorry, I lied. I'm going to undo that. This little button here needs to be off. It's off by default. I had it on because of something I was doing. That makes it so when this is on, it will always scale sort of locked, if that makes sense, right? If it is off, I can trim only one axis, meaning only up and down or left and right. So again, pretty easy actually. Just gonna copy this value, paste it here, and boom, we have a perfectly square 1446 by 1446 image. Then I could just drag this all the way, or just crank up the curved corners over here either way. And you see eventually it goes from a square with curved corners into just a full-on circle. So that's one way to turn something into a circle. Very easy. Depending on what you're working with, there are even easier ways though. So let's undo a couple of these things. Let's go back to, okay, we're back to this image not being square. It's a rectangle again. Debatably an even easier way to turn something like this into a square is if you take the image and copy it. So I'm clicking on it, Control C. Then give ourselves a circle. Remember, I'm holding Shift right now to make sure this is a perfect circle. If I let go of Shift, I can do ovals. But I'm holding Shift, so I get a perfect circle. Click on that circle. Oh, whoops. Back to this image. Sorry. Actually, we'll start here. So if you click on this circle, you will see our fill is this gray, right? We were talking about fill earlier. Now I'll make it pure white. If you go to this image, you'll see that our fill is actually the image. So what you can do is either double click on this, or when it's selected, you can click on this here. You'll see it does the same thing. It highlights this image in blue as if I double click, or I guess it doesn't do it in blue here because it opens this up. But with this image selected, I can then copy, go down to this, paste, and boom. We have the image filling kind of the way a color does. And they're just like our layers over here, they're stacked on top of each other. So let's say I wanted to tint Sukumo red. There's a couple ways to do that. One could be putting a fill on top of him, making it red, and then making it super see-through. Right? And now we have kind of a red Sukumo. There are better ways to make him red. I think this is just me sort of explaining how fills can work. You can stack fills, you can do interesting things. So here's something I might actually do with a fill. I would never do a red fill to tint something. The easier way to tint something is if you click on the actual image, there's a tint. and temperature. But we're not going to get into that now. This is more Photoshop stuff, so don't worry about that. But one of the ways I might actually use like two fills together is, let's say I want to put a cool kind of shimmer on top of Superman. So if I go to this fill here, you'll see these buttons up here. This first button that's default selected is just a solid color. You can make it slightly see-through, but other than that, it's just a flat solid color. This next one is a gradient. So let me make these 100% transparency just so you guys can see what I'm doing here. The way a gradient works is you can kind of have two colors shift from one another. So you can see I could drag this around. I can change the placement. Over here, I could change it to a radial gradient, which means instead of like just a line, it's a circle that changes colors over time. If I want to make that circle ovular, there's this little handle I can play with. By the way, I know I'm now kind of doing a lot at once. It's because you don't need to remember all these specific things. I think just watching, sort of generally playing around, seeing what the software is capable of, that's what I'm aiming to kind of get you guys in the headspace of right now. So let's go back to a linear one. And then let's make this more like rainbow-ish. So instead of just two colors, I'm going to click somewhere along the gradient. I can do it right here, or I can do it here in this pop-up. You can see it made one there, kind of the same thing. And as I drag this around, you'll see this gets dragged around. But yeah, let's grab that. Let's make that like green. And then let's do another one. Let's have that like pink. Grab that one. Go back to, that is kind of a poo-poo color. Let's not do that. Yellow. And then maybe some nice blue. Got something kind of weird like this. And then maybe I would set it 10 is too little. Maybe 25, something like that. And now you have kind of like a shiny holographic Sukumu. Look at that. There are better ways to do this. Normally you would give an overlay with a little bit more specificity, but I'm just showing you tools. This is not an art lesson. This is a program lesson. That's a really big, important thing about today. So I'm just coming up with excuses on the fly to show you all these different settings and stuff. And so let's keep building out this example. Let's say we now want to give it a stroke. Super tiny, you can barely see it at first. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And let's say I'm thinking, ooh, I'm losing some of my image. The stroke is like overtaking it. Pop quiz, what setting would I change so that this stroke doesn't cover any of my image? Someone in chat, let me know. What can I change so that I could make this stroke big and it won't cover the image? I'm about to turn up the music, by the way, so get ready to turn it down on your end if you want. Just want it louder for myself. All right, pop quiz, pop quiz. If we want this stroke to not cover up our image, what setting do we change? You guys are making me think I'm a bad teacher here. I'm not even looking at YouTube chat, unfortunately. I don't know if anyone's there saying anything, but... Okay, Lycos. Question again. Okay. So, we have this circular image of Sukumu. And let's say we want to give it a border, what is called a stroke. But you see how as I make this stroke bigger, it's covering up the image, right? We can barely see his horns anymore. Now it's covering his helmet, etc. If I wanted this to not cover any of the image, what could I change? Clip content settings? Not quite. It's something I went over today already. I'm not hitting you with any curveballs. Okay. We can change the stroke to be outside instead of inside. So now, no matter how much bigger it gets, the stroke's only growing out, so we don't lose any of our image. Does that make sense? Now, strokes are just like fills. They can be gradients. And in fact, a radial gradient might be super cool here, actually. So let's go ahead and give this a cool border. Yeah, stroke alignment will change where the stroke grows from in the image you can think of. So now I've changed my stroke to a circular gradient. And I have this black and this gray. You can barely tell it's a gradient though, unless I make the stroke like much, actually you still couldn't even then. So the way we can fix that is by dragging one of our colors in the gradient right to the edge. And then suddenly we get this nice crispy, by the way, I'm hitting plus and minus on my keyboard to zoom in and out. And to move around, I'm holding the middle mouse button, and that kind of grabs and drags. Same on Mac, I think just 3 fingers grab and drag. So let me zoom in here. So we can do something kind of cool, where let's maybe make that black, this gray in the middle, and then this black again. And so now we have this cool sort of beveled looking edge around it. Pretty cool, right? Similarly, actually, I'm not sure. I think if I select this linear pattern, it's a fill, but it's really just a pattern, and I do copy, click on our stroke, paste, you'll see that this exact same gradient we came up with is now being used on our stroke. That's kind of a cool way to move things around. So let's say you design a linear pattern, sorry, I keep saying some cool color pattern that you want to reuse. You can copy and paste it around pretty easily. Okay, quick pause time. Any questions? They can be questions on things I've already done, or feel free to hit me with like a, how would you do this? Or let's say I wanted to make an XYZ, and I can use that as an example. Take a quick pause. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep chugging here. I think this will be most helpful for people on YouTube videos. Oh, Yagero might have something. How to fix my freezer? That's a good question. Okay. So let me think of a good example of something. Let's say you want to make a text image to share on Twitter, like about Shogun or something. Sukumu, can you grab that image that you put together and paste it in chat? The one that kind of explains, or maybe, did I put it together? I forget, but that's sort of like paper. It's like the size of a paper. It's taller than it is wide. Throw me that image real quick if you have it. Just me, please. Oh, I don't have it right now. Okay, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So let's say you want to make an image to like post on Twitter. In fact, here's an example. You know how a lot of big pages, big companies, they have an image that they paste at the bottom of all their threads that says like, this thread ends here. Any posts beneath this are not official. You know, those type. Let's design something like that. So the specific size and aspect ratio doesn't really matter. It's our own custom image. We'll just have it at the end of threads. Because of how Twitter works, I want it to be slightly wider than it is tall. So not quite a square, but a little bit wider. Something like that. I can imagine that sitting at the end of a tweet thread, right? Let's start with like a fairly dark background, just because dark mode is pretty popular in Web3. Let's pretend this is for Shogun. So first thing you might do is grab a logo. I just dragged it in like from my other monitor, but remember you can also copy paste stuff in. And this even does work from online. So for example, this image, I can copy, paste, boom. Similarly, you know, I could go here and I think, yeah, I could paste over the fill and like, oh, you want this? Okay, wait, if you actually want this, let me show you how we'll do it a little bit cooler. So this fill, I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to turn this into a frame because I'm going to work with multiple layers. What I'm going to do here is pretty simple, actually, don't worry. So I'm just going to quickly look at our image. It is 1307 by 1307. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to add a new little circle. I'm going to make it the same size as our image. Then I'm going to center it. You see Figma has really cool snapping guidelines, so I don't have to guess if I'm centered. Those orange lines tell me perfectly centered. Here, I'm going to, whoops, where this linear pattern we came up with earlier. I'm going to copy it on this circle. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to start at 100%. Right now we can't see anything. So the first version of this I made, I know a little bit of Blender, Yagero. I know a little bit of like every computer app. Before we had just basically this rainbow color, 80% transparent on top of Sukumu. Instead of making it transparent, we now have a separate circle on top of Sukumu, a separate layer. You can see here's the image. I should rename this. That's like Suku image, and we'll even rename this overlay. So here, where you could change the transparency, we're going to click on this little thingy. And again, don't feel like you have to remember all of this. I'm not expecting you to. I'm only doing this because Sukumu actually wants this image. So these are a bunch of interesting ways. It's kind of hard to explain how these fit. Interesting ways that images can interact with each other, right? So even though it's at 100%, if it's at normal, it's just a normal image. But if we do something like lighten, it does this weird color math where it looks at everything under the image and it runs some math equation where this color, that color, etc. And so we can actually get a much cooler looking effect with this. So I'm going to go with soft light just because that looks really cool. And then let's go ahead and compare, actually. Let me go back to our old version. Copy this. Okay, so this was our version 1 image, where it was just that rainbow on top of him with it being mainly see-through. And you can see one thing it did is it kind of washed out the image, like it lost a lot of color. Blacks are closer to grays, white are closer to grays. There's not as much contrast. Whereas over here, we still keep a lot of the colors. We keep those sharp sort of tones. I'll put them right next side by side here. And so you can see this one came out a lot cooler in my opinion. So to give this to Sukumu easily, there is like a proper normal export option where you would save it as a PNG somewhere on your desktop. But instead, I'm just going to click this, do Control-Shift-C. And so what adding the shift does, if I just did Control-C, I would be copying this like Figma frame, and I wouldn't be able to paste it anywhere except Figma, right? Because it doesn't know what it is. But Control-Shift-C copies whatever I'm selected as a flat image. It sort of compresses it all. So now I can go over to Discord, paste, and boom, it's uploading. Cool. Okay. So back to this example. Let's say we are creating one of those end of tweet thread images where you post it at the end of your thread just to make sure no like Sybil accounts trying to look like your project post more. So you might start with just like a kind of blank template, bring in the logo of your project, even if you're not sure where you want to put it at first, just like get it in there. And then write out whatever you think it should say. Well, I'm not going to think too much about this. This is the end of the official thread. Anything below this should be considered a scam. Okay, so we have this big text line that I just drew. And if I kept typing, it would just keep going, even though it's much longer than our actual kind of canvas that we're working in the frame. So I can select that text again and drag one of its edges in, and that kind of changes it so that it is, it has a maximum width. So if I were to keep typing, you'll see it'll only keep it to that length, right? Okay, this is probably not the words we would use, but that's fine. So with some text selected, you have a lot of your text tools that you have in pretty much every program that lets you edit text. So with text selected, under this typography section, we can change the font. And one cool thing about Figma is it previews it when you hover over it, so you can quickly scroll through like a ton of them and find whatever works for you, right? You know, let's go a little goofy with this one. Let's do like a, let's do this. No one would ever use this kind of font for an official announcement. Here we have our font size. There's kind of two different ways to change this. So one, you could change the font size right over here. So let's say I want 60-point font. That just made that a lot bigger. Or I can hit K, switch to my scale tool, and I can just sort of drag to make the text bigger and smaller. And when you do it this way, you'll notice, let me switch back to my normal tool. I'm going to hit V on my keyboard. V and K are the two like buttons to switch between tools you'll use a lot. So I'm back on my normal move tool. You'll see that now our font size is 82.86. A weird decimal number because we changed it. Instead of changing it the right way, we changed it by just sort of scaling like this. So you can get really weird fraction percentage decimals. What do I think about affinity? I would 100% recommend Figma over Canva. Yeah, Canva is super limited. Canva is what like if a suburban house mom suddenly needs to put together a presentation for a PTA meeting, she'll use Canva because it's that easy and has like AI tools. Not that Canva's bad, but no professionals use it. And Figma, I might not be being a great teacher today, but I promise you this is actually a pretty easy program to learn. Photoshop was way harder. Premiere Pro, Adobe stuff, way harder. Use Canva most of the time. Okay. What do you use it for, Lycos? I'm looking for an example here that I can like maybe do here. Poster mostly. Can you send an example? Something you've made in Canva? Thank you, Suku. Hope that's true. Who knows? Okay, I actually hate this font so much, even as a joke. Let's just change it to something more readable. So continuing over here, just with our fonts and stuff. That's a good way to put it. Canva's not bad. It just jump starts you a lot. There's templates, a lot of hand holding, but not very flexible. Whereas Figma, yeah, much more. Let me just go get a normal font. Let's just do like Arial. Okay, so we have our font size here. Make it 90 so it's a nice even number. We have whether we want it bold, black, italic bold. You'll notice these options change depending on the font. That has nothing to do with Figma. Certain fonts just don't have other options to it, right? So this font has no italic version, no bold version whatsoever. Now, cool little trick I've learned is if you want to make a font a little bit more bold and there's not a bold option, so right now our font is perfectly white, right? We can add a stroke, make it white, make it on the outside, and make it maybe like 2 pixels. And now I'm going to toggle that stroke on and off. So you can kind of see like, it's a cool way to kind of like, you can make a font bold even if it doesn't have a bold version. But you start to go too much and it really breaks down because, you know, it's not the proper way to do this. But if you just need to make it a little bit thicker, that's a cool little trick. Let's just test another random one. Audio wide. Yep, no options. Value. So a lot of these are fonts I've downloaded, and I haven't downloaded the full pack that includes like bold, italic, etc. You'll also notice some of these fonts, like instead of having drop-down options here, let me see if I can find an example here. They're actually just different fonts. It's very weird. So this font, Sarah GR, it has a dedicated bold version, light, medium, regular. Whereas if I like click on just one of them, I can't switch between the others here. In fact, what the fuck is that? I don't even know what that little symbol is, but so yeah, for now I'm just gonna go with font I know and like. Nice and simple. Okay, cool. Yagero and ways. Well, Yagero, would talk to me for a second. So you're saying, you know, maybe I'd want to do it professionally. Don't want to stay away from AI. Blah blah blah. What would you? What are you aiming to be able to do? Like, where would you like to apply these skills if you had them? Um, what kind of stuff would you be making? Game dev, interesting. Where would Figma be used? So Figma would probably be used in game dev for designing UIs. So both your player UI, things like menus, setting screens, etc. Right? So let's just pretend like let's just do that for a second. So let's get a standard monitor sized. I mean, I know everybody, in fact. We'll go to 1080p because we are living in 2026. So now we have 1920 by 1080. So let's say like this is your game that you're designing for. In fact, I'm just going to dive into this example. So I know this doesn't have to do with Web3, but it's just an excuse for me to show you these various tools, right? I deleted it after 2 days. For me, it's very boring. I don't know if I'd call it boring. Do you mean it was a little difficult? Well, I guess, yeah. If you're not into it, I guess boring, actually. I can see that. Okay. So, don't make fun of me on the actual game side here. I'm just pulling this all out of my ass, right? Let's pretend. What kind of game should we design a UI for? Somebody give me a game genre. Shooter, adventure game, 2D. What kind of game should we design a UI for? Chess 2. No. The one game that doesn't need a UI. No. Chess, this man says. How do I keep losing everything? I'll do like here, I'll design this like a Stardew Valley type top-down 2D type thing. Okay. So personally, I would probably get some random sample image to throw in. Like let's see if we can just go grab pixel art landscape. Just like something. Perfect. That is not pixel art at all. Whatever. Wait, let's try and see if we can get an isometric image. Cool, perfect. Perfect. I bet you this is a Web3 thing. Nop on X? Who knows? Nop, we're borrowing your image for learning day. Oh, this is perfect. Okay, cool. So let's say this is like a game. The actual game is already being designed. This is what it looks like. We are using Figma to design the interface, right? The UI, things like health bars, inventory, things you can build, blah, blah, blah. So let's pretend this is like a city building game. This guy kind of fits, right? So like, let's say we built all these buildings. We have a little build menu. Let's start super basic. So in the top left corner, maybe we'd have a menu button, right? Where you click it and it opens a menu. So let's design something like that real quick. Let's keep everything organized. Let's name this entire frame game UI example. And then to make things easier on you guys, I'm actually going to do this. Oh, well. Then a whole blank thing. That way there's a clean, you don't have a bunch of layers to look at. This will keep things. So I just opened a new document real quick for people curious. Okay, so let's start with just like a little menu button. So I'm going to make a new frame. And I'm just going to kind of guess the size at first. Doesn't matter too much. Do something like that. Now let's give it a color. So I'm going to add a fill. I'm going to grab a color from our image here. So let me click eyedropper tool. And oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab this color for the background, sort of. And then, so within this, let's make, you know, the classic 3 lines that kind of dictate like a menu. Here's a menu you open. We're going to do that. So I just made a rectangle within my frame. So I have this frame, and in fact, let me name things. Let me be good here. Menu button. Menu button. So this whole thing is menu button. This little rectangle, I'm going to make the color of this shaded area. So it's kind of following the color scheme, right? And then I'm going to hold Alt and drag, which makes a copy. Or, of course, I can Control C, copy, Control V, pasted another one. Same thing, works the same way. Okay. I think I got my sizes a little off. It needs to be more like that, maybe. And then, since I've been dragging these corners, we're kind of getting random sizes. I just turned on snap to pixel grid. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 copies of this thing. I'm going to grab all of them, right click, and frame. So now all 3 of these lines is like one thing. And the reason I did that is so now I can center that perfectly. See this orange line that comes across my screen? That means it's like perfectly centered. Boom. And then I'm going to say something like options. Let's see if we can find a pixel font. Beautiful, perfect. Let's make this a good bit bigger. Probably should be options. And so just like that, we've kind of designed our first bit of UI, right? So again, there's a lot of design decisions. You could also do like just that. Many people might know that's the kind of icon you click on. You could also replace these with a gear icon. Let's do that super quick. So Figma has a ton of plugins that you don't even need to leave the app to get. It's beautiful. You just right click anywhere, plugins, manage plugins, and then search for what you need. So I need some icons. We'll just open any of the plugins. Should work for something like this. They might have different. I'm just going to search gear. And boom, I like that gear. So you could also do something like that, right? A gear option is often used as like a menu sort of symbol icon. Oops. Oh, okay, cool. So here's a good example. Something weird just happened. It says Wazen's in here. I don't know. So, okay, these buttons up here in the top right are very helpful. Let me create a new thing just to show an example. Okay. So let's say we have this frame that we're working in and just circle in it. So this circle lives inside this frame, right? Its coordinates even, so like its X and its Y, it's relative only to this frame. X being how many pixels over it is, Y being how many pixels down it is. So if we put this circle all the way up in the top left, you'll see its coordinates are 0, 0. Because this circle like can't see outside of its frame, if that makes sense. It doesn't know about all this space. It doesn't care. Its entire world is in its parent frame, the ellipse that's in this parent frame. So it thinks it's at coordinates like 0, 0 right now, 0, 0. And so one thing I'll often use are these buttons up here, which are super helpful. So this button will make it perfectly touching the left side of its boundary. It'll set X to 0. This one will make it perfectly in the middle of its boundary. So it's perfectly straight up and down. This one will do right, big guess. And then these are same, but for up and down. So we can do stick to the very top, stick right in the middle, stick right at the bottom. And so one thing I'll often do is I'll like click this middle one and this middle one just to get stuff perfectly centered. Boom. It's possible, Wayland. It's possible. It's possible. Oh, wait. Yeah. No, as an ambassador, yeah. We should be able to do that. Okay, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. This circle, can move it around with these tools, easy way to center stuff or make it flush with an edge. So the reason I went on to that is I tried to just do it here. I want this gear to be perfectly in the center of this yellow box, but you can see it's not, right? There's a little extra space over here, more on the top than the bottom. And so I clicked these buttons and it did something weird. Whoa, it just disappeared. What happened is you can see over here, let me undo the changes, is this gear is not actually inside our menu button frame, right? It's above it, it's outside of it. So when we told it to go to the center, it went to the center of this whole canvas. So to fix that, we just put the gear inside this yellow menu thing, and then when we click center, we get it perfectly centered. Okay, let's design what would happen if you clicked that, right? So the menu that would pop up. So we're going to use some cool tools for this. So we're going to start by just drawing a rough sort of menu shape in the middle of our template. Let's give it a background for now. Probably won't use this color, or probably won't use this, obviously. Let's go for like a darker version of the color we're already using. So I'm gonna sample that, and I'm just gonna bring down the darkness a bit. Gonna round these corners a bit. And so this is, and then let's make sure it's centered. Cool, it is. So now we need to design buttons, right? One of the most powerful parts of Figma is something called components, where you can make one and then duplicate them and have them like work together. I'll explain. Actually, we're not going to get into components right now. Let's just design a button. So we have a frame here. Let's call this pop-up menu. Within our pop-up menu frame, let's start building some buttons. Button. Let's go like black, but only 20%. So basically, or let's do like 35%. So it's basically just going to be a dark version of the color behind it. That's fine. Let's also curve these corners a little, just so they kind of stay consistent. And let's get some text in the button. So your top button would probably be something like resume. Make it a little bit bigger. Let's give our button a little bit of style, just so it stands out. Let's give it like a simple stroke. We're going to do the same thing, black, but semi-transparent, so that it actually turns into just like a dark brown. Kind of see that? I'm going to manually center this, just because it doesn't look centered to me. That looks pretty good. Oh, actually, I like that font much better. Beautiful. And then, okay, so what else could we... Timmy made all the NFTs. I did. But yeah, ways and I'll hook you up. Let's give this a drop shadow too. So that's going to be found in our bottom right here, effects. And then let me Control Shift Alt. Boom. Make this stuff even bigger for you guys. Okay, so we're selected on our button. We're going to add an effect. it defaults to drop shadow. That's perfect. That's what we want. And so a drop shadow is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's a shadow that the item drops, and you can kind of change where it's gonna, it changes to where it looks like the light is coming from, right? So if the light was like directly above it, the shadow would be perfectly centered underneath. I have some blur to it, and boom. So now let's look at a before and after. So no shadow, shadow, no shadow, shadow. And in fact, just because I want to see what it looks like, let's see what an inner shadow would look like. Sometimes this can make, and let's go white. So that gives this, I made a white inner shadow, and it gives this kind of interesting, like, inner glow to it. I don't know. Do we like that? I think we'll stick with it for now. Let's see if it looks good with the drop shadow. Not so much. Can animated images be created in Figma? Not really. Like GIF? No, not really. You can bring GIFs into Figma. So if you're designing a website and like part of it is going to be a GIF, you can bring that into Figma and it will play. But you can't really like make them yourself. Let's see if I can find a .gif file real quick. Holy moly. So like, it's weird, right? GIFs in Figma, not really. Like it's there, but it's not really. So back to this little menu we're designing. Okay, so I like this button design. Let's say we're gonna keep it, okay? And actually, wait. Maybe we can give... Does it look better or worse if the text has a stroke? Try inside. Nope. No stroke on the text. Okay. So I like this button design, right? And we want all the other buttons to look similar to it, right? So I actually am going to cover this thing called components. Again, you guys are not going to remember all this. If you're brand new to Figma, I've probably already completely lost you. That's fine though. Hopefully you'll be able to go to YouTube, watch this again, check out other videos, and just in general, kind of get a good feel for this stuff. So I'm going to bring this button outside of my working area real quick. Delete that. We don't need it. So this button, I'm going to right click and create component. So that kind of turns it into like a template where, so here's my parent component. Let me duplicate this. So let's take all those, bring it in here. So I didn't need to do a component. I could have just duplicated the button, right? But the cool thing about a component is now, if I ever want to change something on this button, let's say I'm not a big fan of the font. I go to the parent one up here, and you can see it changes all of them. Let's make this not go all over the place as much. In fact, I kind of like that one. And then similar with anything, right? Let's say we want to make that inner shadow that's white right now. Let's say we want that to be like kind of red or green. Changing stuff in the parent will change every button. And so this will save you so much. When I was building the NFTs, I used so many components because if I wanted to change one thing on like a helmet, I could change all 200 of the NFTs at once, that sort of thing. Let's go back to our nice design. And even though they are all copies, you can change certain things without them like becoming disconnected. So zoom, say settings, help, save, save and quit. Okay, let's say that's kind of like the options we'd want in our menu, right? And then I was thinking maybe we'd put a little X in the corner to close it, but that's really what the resume button would do. Resume would like close the menu. Okay, so now let's make this look a little bit prettier. So, okay, thinking of how to explain. This frame we're working in, the pop-up menu frame. So this is all we're talking about. You can ignore the background image up here. If I have that selected, I have an option called auto layout. What that's going to do is it's going to look at, it can already kind of tell that within this frame, there's a consistent pattern, right? There's the exact same layer, exact same size and shape, spread out evenly. And so if I click auto layout, it's going to kind of quickly wrap everything and make it nice and even. And then I get this whole new auto layout section where I can, for example, change how much space is in between each item. I could change how wide the like borders are of the parent container on the top and bottom. And there's a lot of little settings you can change so that it behaves differently. We're not going to get into that right now. Like auto layout, there's entire videos on YouTube dedicated just to that. So okay, I think I'm actually going to pause there. I think that's a pretty good, like, we could just keep going. Yeah, actually, what doesn't look good about it, though? Okay, this whole thing needs to stand out from the background a bit more. So let's add a drop shadow to the entire thing and make it blurred so it... Okay, that helps a bit. And then actually, we'd probably do something... So I just made a giant rectangle and I'm going to use it as a background blurrer. So that's kind of more what it would look like. If you click this gear icon up here, you'll get this menu popped up. The background would blur a bit. Let's keep that actually. Whoa. Let's keep that as our sort of menu thing and go back to here. So if you were here, you'd click this little icon and it would switch to this. Then let's say you're in game, and you need like a toolbar of the things you're able to build. So let's Okay. So I just created a new frame and a rectangle down here at the bottom. And so we're going to give it a stroke, and there's this whole cool world of settings for types of strokes. We're not going to get too far into any of that today. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to select this. We're going to do auto layout. Now everything is nice and perfectly even. And then I'm going to stop here, but like I could then have an actual artist or AI or whatever generate little icons to go in here. So let's say this is like my building toolbar. Bring up my screenshotting tool. Just take a picture of that. Go here. Paste it way too big. Smaller. Oops. So again, pretend we're in like a little city building game. This would be my hotbar where I could like click this and then plop down another house. I could click this and then build more fountains. I don't know why I randomly, well, I guess because I asked people in chat for examples. Obviously, this is a video game, and the point of this whole series is to give you a skill you can learn in Web3. But this is the type of software that is a good skill to learn in any industry, really. Not any, but pretty much. Like, if you want to stay in Web3, there's about 15 different types of jobs where knowing Figma here would be helpful. If you want to move outside of Web3, 80% of industries have some level of design to it, where knowing Figma could be helpful. Even just for personal reasons, right? You want to make a Twitter banner for yourself. You want to spice up your profile picture, whatever it might be. In fact, okay, here's a weird one. You can use Figma for so much random stuff. I even use it for non-design personal stuff sometimes. So, you know that game you saw me playing in one of our past streams, Tarkov? So it's an incredibly complicated game with a bunch of like maps that are not in game, a bunch of lists of stuff to keep track of. And I use Figma kind of like a digital whiteboard, just an infinite amount of space where I can just cut and paste images, quickly go look around them. Easy to have everything in one place. I can search it. You can say I even kind of made my own like, I don't know what I was doing here actually. I think I was doing like a checklist type thing. So yeah. Figma can really be used for so many different things. I used it entirely for our NFT collection. Let me see if I can find something. Way back in Cosmos, when Brandon and I were working at a completely different company, well before Shogun, we had a super, man, this is taking a while to open. It's such a big file. We had a very, very, very cool NFT project going. I'm a little bit bummed it never went anywhere. So this is super old at this point. But these are all components. So you know how an NFT is like a certain body with a certain piece of clothing, with a certain hairstyle, certain hat. Those are usually the traits. One way people do that is components. So for example, on the head, our NFTs could have had an astronaut helmet, some kind of like Trump hair. This is a symbol for a chain. Yeah, this would have made me famous in the cosmos. Mohawk, squid, hat. So where So like we have this little NFT right here. Oh, the Luna logos. Oh, the Luna. Oh, RIP Luna. But so as I'm building this like NFT, I can go to the background here and change between all these different components. So boom, we got the Stargaze background. For the body, let's go Osmosis Tall. Now let's do Osmosis Snake. For the face, I don't like these Terra Luna glasses. Let's go Thorchain. Head, let's go Thorchain as well. Why not? Accessories, the harpoon's pretty cool, but so was the hub got a little rocket ship. So here's an example of Figma being used entirely for NFTs, which is a directly Web3 related thing. And I think everything here is made in Figma. Yeah, like even these are broken down into individual components. Like I made these floors in Figma using nothing but this image that I think I might have made in Photoshop, like a pixelated version of a logo. Figma doesn't support real 3D, but you can kind of fake 3D looks like this. How it kind of looks like they're at an angle on the ground. Yeah. So I know today was a bit all over the place. I didn't intend to like have you guys become experts by the end of it. But hopefully, here's the big question, and anyone who's here right now, please do reply in chat. Do you feel at least comfortable enough where you could open this up and maybe start messing around, just doing some basic stuff, just making some kind of like, you know, something simple like these sorts of things. Like this kind of looks like you just dragged a bunch of different images on top of each other, right? I don't know if you did any of this in Canvas. Or maybe you did. I don't know. I don't know how you would do that in Canvas, though. Very much assuming that was made elsewhere or with AI. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll just do one super quick more run through from the top of everything, and then we're gonna call it. So at the very top, you have your different projects you have open at any given time. You can always make new ones here. When inside a project, on the left here, ignore pages, by the way. This is one of the things that comes with paid Figma, is one project can have multiple different like pages. It's just an organizational thing. Ignore pages. Ignore pages for now. If you need multiple pages, just make multiple draft files up here. But you have your layers, which is everything that is in your canvas, in this project whatsoever. Now, obviously, we have a lot here in this canvas, but we only see 3 layers. That's because they're all containers, right? So this one here, we can open that layer, and we'll see like, oh, okay, we have our menu bar at the bottom. We can open that up and see each of the hotbar keys in the menu. We can close it again. We have our gear icon up there that has a gear inside of it, and then the background image, blah, blah, blah. So these are all of your little layers. And the icon to the left of the layer is like a kind of shortcut to let you know what it is at a glance. Just, you'll memorize it over time. You don't need to know them. This weird little like quadruple diamond is the symbol for a component. The hashtag is a symbol for frames. This little icon is the symbol for a frame that's auto layouted. Here's when you have an image. You know, shapes will be simple. They'll actually look like the shape. You can see the icon of the rectangle here gets like thinner. So that's your layers over here, pretty straightforward. At the bottom, you have your toolbar, where the most important things are really gonna be these 2 categories. Actually, this category and this button. So frame, you're gonna use all the time. This is creating an actual canvas, right? If I was creating a nice square image, I'd draw a new frame, hold shift, and then boom, I have this area to work in. Within that area to work in, maybe I want to add some shapes. Maybe I want to type some text. test text and stuff, and then go, oh, oops, I didn't do it in the frame. It's outside of it. So that's pretty easy to change. This is white, actually, so we won't be able to see it. Let's go black text. You can drag that layer into the frame over here, but then you won't see it because it's like outside the boundaries of the frame, right? So let's bring that back out. You can also just click and drag, and Figma will detect that you're hovering over a frame, and now it's inside of it. It's part of it. Various lines, rectangles, arrows to draw. Your pen tool you might use sometimes. It's more of a Photoshop tool, but if you want to draw custom shapes of interesting shapes and sizes, that can be helpful. And then your text tool. I think I just realized I forgot to show you. When you use your text tool, remember how if you click and just start typing, it's just going to go horizontal forever until you manually come in and like set a width. If when you go to make your text layer, instead of just clicking, if you drag a box, that will automatically set it to have a maximum of that width. And then finally, we'll take a look at this right side again, just to run through it again. So this is all the info about whatever you have selected. This is its position, which kind of doesn't mean anything if you're selected on like a top layer, because like here's 0, 0. There's nothing significant about that place. It just happens to be the middle of our entire dock. So position, these two values, X and Y, you're going to use more so for stuff inside a frame. So let's say I want this rectangle to be exactly 100 pixels away from the left edge. I can set its position to 100, and I'm not going to go in there and count, but I can promise you there's 100 pixels between the edge and this rectangle. Same with Y. You can also click and drag these values if you want. Ignore this stuff for now. It is very helpful, but not worth filling your head with at the moment. Layout, this has more to do with the size of the thing. So position up here, and then here is size, where you can change them independently, or click this little button, and it kind of scales while keeping its shape and keeping its proportions intact. Below that, you have appearance, which kind of affects any strokes we put on it, any effects, any fills. That's all affected by appearance. So if you curve the corners, that's going to curve the corners of the stroke. It's going to curve the corners of the drop shadow if we add it in the effect. If you make this somewhat see-through, we can add a 100% stroke, but it's still not going to be 100% black because our parent, the whole layer, this whole rectangle, is only 70% see-through. So if I change that to 100, and then like change that to 70, now we can have just the stroke being somewhat see-through, whereas the fill is still like 100%. So this is like your master opacity that affects everything going on in the layer. For fills and strokes, we can do solid colors or customizable gradients. Get some cool patterns going on. There are some other options here, including like GIF if you want to bring a GIF in, images, but mainly just going to be using these two options here. Stroke, pretty self-explanatory and easy to use. You can make bigger, smaller, change its color and its opacity here. Just remember that where you want the stroke, actually here's an interesting example. So if I go center, because this stroke is partly see-through, you can see, since the stroke is centered, we have the stroke both on the outside of the layer here, where it's like a light pink because behind it is white. Whereas on the inside of the layer, it's more of like a dull red because the background is this dark gray. So right? Center, go just outside, just inside, centered, make it bigger. That's sort of how that works. Then lastly, we have effects. You want to add a drop shadow, kind of one big human tip I'll give you guys, rather than any specific piece of advice, but just as a human. Do not try and memorize everything. That's not how I approach learning software. It's not how you should. Like, for the first 50 times I used Figma, when I opened like this drop shadow thing, I just kind of messed around with these values and like saw what they did, right? I wasn't trying to memorize how they work. I was just like, okay, wait, let me just play with them until I feel like, okay, I know what that does. I know what that does. And that's how you guys should approach it too. Don't feel shy that it's complicated. Don't feel like you're forgetting details. Just play around, poke buttons. Remember, Control Z or Command Z for undo is a huge friend of yours. You can't really mess anything up if you can always undo it. Yeah, honestly, I think of learning new software similar to learning a video game. Yeah, no, especially one like this. It's kind of visual and fun, you know, compared to... I don't think you could say the same about like some tax software or accounting software, but with this, definitely can. And then the last thing I didn't go over at all is just exporting, which is super simple. Down here on the far right, you have export. You'll click plus. You can export multiple versions of an image. So right now, if I clicked export, I would export 3 versions of this image. One at normal size, one at twice the size, and one at 3x the size. You're rarely going to do that, don't worry. You mainly just do 1x export. You can decide if you want it to be a PNG. Stay away from PDF and SVG unless you know what you're doing, unless you have a specific reason for these two. Just keep it as PNG and JPEG. Don't really need to mess with anything else. You can open up the preview if you just want to double check, like, okay, what, you know, let's take this for example. So if I go down to export, I can see my preview. Looks good, cool. I don't have any extra in there. I don't have any weird edges. Then you'd click the export layer name, and it's gonna open your thing where you'll decide where you want to save it. Similarly, you can click on anything in here and do Control-Shift-C or Command-Shift-C, and that will just copy the image to your clipboard. So you can just copy-paste it anywhere nice and easy. You know, I kind of want to play this game now. Looks like a cozy little mobile game. Okay. And actually, this almost looks like a low battery warning icon on accident, doesn't it? Yeah, actually it really does. Hold on. Let's see, like, needs to be a little bit wider to be a battery. Ooh. And then it needs the little what you call it. The nub, I suppose is what I'll call it. Low battery. Boom. Make it green. Okay, so here's a cool little thing. So to make this green, I would need to change this color, the 2 reddish ones in the gradient, as well as our stroke, which is also red, right? Or, let me just drag a big old thing on top of it, make this green, and then change its blending mode to hue, or color. Color could work, but we'll go with hue. So what that does is it makes the layer transparent, but it applies its color to anything beneath it with a color. You can see this gray area up here has no color, so it doesn't really change. And boom. In fact, little stuff like that, Sukumu, like telling me to make it green, that's really good. That's what I want you guys to do during this, because that's the point of a live stream instead of a scripted thing, right? You can be like, oh, okay, wait, so how would I do X, Y, or Z? And I can show you right on the fly. All right, I hope this was helpful for people. I know it was a bit all over the place, but it was just supposed to maybe make it a little less scary for you guys to open up and check out. I promise you, if you have any hope of working in Web3 full-time, part-time, freelance, do some projects for yourself, knowing this software is going to be huge. Even if it's just for being able to make an image to post on Twitter, right? Whatever it might be, there's a million ways to use Figma. I've seen it come in handy a million different ways. It's what pretty much everyone uses to design website UIs, and like app UIs, mobile app UIs, etc. All right, everybody. I think we are going to spin this down. Thank you guys for joining. We will do another one of these at some point. This isn't going to become a scheduled series, but whenever I have some time and a good idea, we'll do one of these like learn skills for Web3 type episodes. So do let me know though, not right now, just over the next couple days in Discord as we're chatting. Next time I do one of these, should we come back to Figma and sort of refresh everything, maybe do something a little more advanced, or do we want to check out a different software, different skill to learn? So just think on that. Let me know in Discord over the next like week or so. We'll chat, and I think we're gonna call it there. If you're following on YouTube watching this later, make sure you're in the Discord. Link should be in the description. And if you're here on Discord and you want to watch through this again later, the recording will be on YouTube. So have a good one, everyone. Obayo, and we will see you all soon.